Got a thumbs up. Here's a Hook Plus CTA translated into English with the same suspenseful, cinematic tone. Hashtag clapperboard hook. Opening of the video. Have you ever walked down into a basement and caught the sharp scent of freshly turned soil? The problem is, no one has dug there for decades. Tonight, I'll tell you a terrifying story about a house that hides a secret beneath its floor, a secret no one dares to uncover until now. Hashtag clapperboard CTA. Place right where suspense begins. And this is where the story turns truly frightening. If you want to hear the full truth until the very end, make sure to hit that subscribe button right now. And don't forget to leave a comment with your ideas for the next chilling story. Because who knows, your comment might just become the next real nightmare we uncover. Perfect. Let's build this into a cinematic, chilling YouTube script exactly in the style you want. Here's the full script for The Basement Smells Like Fresh Soil. But no one's been there, asterisk, backhand index pointing down. Hashtag studio microphone, YouTube voiceover script. /hook midnight to 010. The basement smelled like freshly turned soil, but no one had touched the ground in years. /suspenseful setup 010 to 1 o'clock. It started on a quiet Thursday night. A couple moved into their dream home. Big kitchen. Wide windows, a backyard with endless possibilities. But the basement was different. Dark, damp, and strangely cold. At first, they ignored it, until one night, the husband noticed something unusual. The sharp scent of wet dirt, fresh soil, as if someone had been digging down there. But the floor was untouched. /build-up 1 to 4 o'clock. Days turned into weeks. Every time they entered the basement, the smell grew stronger, almost overwhelming. Neighbors whispered strange things about the house. How the previous owners moved out without warning. How the windows stayed dark for months. And how, sometimes at night, faint thuds could be heard coming from underground. The couple laughed it off, until the wife swore she heard something. A dragging sound. Slow, heavy, like someone pulling a shovel across the floor. But when they checked, the basement was still, silent, empty. /mid-story CTA 4 o'clock. If you're hooked already, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss more chilling stories like this. /main climax 4 to 7 o'clock. One evening, the husband couldn't take it anymore. He grabbed a flashlight and went down alone. The smell hit him instantly. Thick, wet, fresh earth. But this time, something had changed. In the corner of the basement, the cement floor looked cracked, a small line running across the surface. He crouched down, touched it, and froze, because the cement wasn't just cracked. It was soft, as if someone or something had been digging from below. That night, they didn't sleep. The wife begged him to call the police. But by morning, the cracks had spread wider, and on the surface of the basement floor was a handprint, a muddy human handprint. /cliffhanger ending 7:00 plus. The police finally agreed to investigate. They brought equipment, tools, shovels, and when they broke through the basement floor, what they uncovered was far darker than anyone could have imagined. To be continued. Perfect. Let's pick up right where we left off. Here's the part 2 continuation script of The Basement Smells Like Fresh Soil. Hashtag studio microphone, YouTube voiceover script, part 2. /hook recap, midnight to 015. The police cracked open the basement floor, and what they uncovered beneath the soil was darker than anyone expected. /suspenseful setup 015 to 1 o'clock. The smell of rot hit them instantly. Not just dirt anymore. It was a stench of death. Officers exchanged uneasy glances. And as the hole widened, something pale began to emerge. A human bone. /build-up 1 to 3:30. Within hours, the basement looked like an excavation site. Piece by piece, the earth revealed a horrifying secret. Not one body. Not two, but several, all buried carefully. Stacked, as if someone had been collecting them. The husband and wife stood frozen at the top of the stairs. They thought they had bought a family home. Instead, they were standing above a graveyard. Detectives worked in silence, their faces pale. Each body showed signs of violence. Shallow wounds, rope marks, and something more disturbing, objects buried with the remains. Children's toys, wedding rings, shoes, tokens, almost like trophies. /midstory CTA 330. If you're drawn into this mystery, hit subscribe now, because what happens next will chill you even deeper. /main climax, 3:30 to 6 o'clock. The police traced the property records back decades, and what they discovered left the entire neighborhood speechless. This wasn't the first time bodies had been found here. In fact, it wasn't even the second. 50 years earlier, this same basement was the site of another police investigation. Back then, the house had belonged to a man everyone described as ordinary, quiet, friendly, the kind of neighbor you'd never suspect. Until one winter, his wife and 2 children vanished. No trace, no goodbye, just gone. And when detectives finally searched his basement, they found shallow graves beneath the cement floor. But here's the terrifying part. That man never served a single day in prison. The case was dismissed, and the house was sold. Again and again, each new family moving in, never knowing what lay beneath. /cliffhanger ending 6:00+. The couple who own the home now, they swore they could still hear digging at night. Even after the police had cleared the basement, even after the bodies were gone, neighbors whispered that the land itself was cursed, that no matter how many times the ground was disturbed, it would always bury its secrets again. And one night, when the wife went downstairs to do laundry, she screamed, because in the corner of the freshly sealed floor, the cracks had returned. To be continued. All right, let's dive into part 3, picking up exactly where part 2 left off, with the cracks reappearing in the basement floor. #, studio microphone, YouTube voiceover script, part 3. /hook recap, midnight to 0:15. The cracks had returned. Even after the basement was sealed, the floor was breaking open again. /suspenseful setup, 0:15 to 1 o'clock. The wife swore she saw it first. A thin, jagged line crawling across the cement, as if something beneath was pushing upward. She called her husband, but when he looked, the crack was gone. Smooth, unbroken. Only the smell of fresh soil remained. /build up, 1 to 3:30. At night, the digging sounds grew louder. Scraping, dragging, sometimes followed by whispers. Voices so faint, you couldn't tell if they were real or just in your head. One evening, desperate for answers, the husband installed cameras, motion sensors, audio recorders, anything that could prove what they were hearing. But when he checked the footage, the basement was empty. No movement, no intruder, just hours of silence, except for one frame. At 3:15 a.m., the camera flickered, and for less than a second, a figure appeared, pale, thin, standing in the far corner of the basement, its head tilted, its hands black with dirt. /midstory CTA 330. If this has you on edge, make sure you're subscribed, because what's coming next will make you rethink basements forever. /main climax, 3:30 to 6 o'clock. The couple took the footage to police. But when the officers viewed it, the figure wasn't there, just an empty basement. That night, the wife woke to sound, the basement door slowly creaking open. She shook her husband awake. But when he ran to the hallway, the door was closed tight, locked from the inside. The next morning, he found muddy footprints leading up the basement stairs. Small, bare, child-sized, and at the very top step, a toy, an old, dirt-covered teddy bear, one of the exact toys the police had found buried with the bodies. /cliffhanger ending 6:00+. By now, they were convinced this wasn't just a crime scene. It was something far darker, something that didn't want to stay buried. The husband tried to move the family out, but the real estate agent laughed. "No one ever really leave that house," she said. "Ask the families before you. Only, Those families never survived long enough to move out. To be continued. Perfect. Let's push deeper into the nightmare. Here's part 4 of The Basement Smells Like Fresh Soil. #, studio microphone, YouTube voiceover script, part 4. / hook recap, midnight to 020. The agent's words echoed in his mind. No one ever really leaves that house. And the husband finally realized. The house didn't want them to leave. / suspenseful setup, 020 to 1 o'clock. He started digging into old records, newspapers, archives. Every family who lived there had vanished. No moving trucks, no forwarding addresses, just disappeared. And always the same detail. Neighbors recalling strange smells. The scent of fresh soil in the basement, followed by cracks in the floor. / build-up, 1 to 3:30. The wife, meanwhile, was unraveling. She swore she saw children in the hall at night. Small shadows darting past the doorway. Sometimes laughing, sometimes crying, and always leading toward the basement. She begged him to destroy it, to fill it with concrete, burn it, anything. But he couldn't. Something about it felt alive. Like the more they tried to fight it, the stronger it became. One night, when he returned from work, the basement door was wide open, the lights inside flickering, and his wife was gone. / midstory CTA 330. If you're still here, you need to subscribe, because what happens next, you won't forget. / main climax, 3:30 to 6 o'clock. He rushed down the stairs. The smell hit him instantly, stronger than ever. The entire floor had cracked open, and in the center was a pit, a hole leading down into darkness. At the edge of the pit lay his wife's phone, the screen glowing, recording with trembling hands. He pressed play, and what he heard was not her voice. It was dozens of voices, men, women, children, all whispering the same thing. Stay. The basement lights shattered. The pit began to move, as if something enormous was climbing upward. / cliffhanger ending 6:00+. He stumbled back toward the stairs, but the door above slammed shut. The voices grew louder, chanting now, shaking the walls. And from the pit, a hand emerged, rotting, mud-covered, grabbing the edge. Then another, and another, until the husband realized they weren't alone anymore. To be continued. Got it. Let's descend into part 5, where the horror fully takes shape. Here's a continuation of The Basement Smells Like Fresh Soil. #, studio microphone, YouTube voiceover script, part 5. / hook recap, midnight to 020. Hands clawed their way out of the pit. Dozens of them, pulling at the floor, dragging themselves into the light. / suspenseful setup, 020 to 1 o'clock. The husband froze. The smell of earth and rot was suffocating. He could hear fingernails scraping against concrete, skin tearing, bones cracking, and then faces sunken, hollow, eyes that had no light left in them. They were the dead. Every soul buried beneath that basement, crawling back. / build-up, 1 to 3:30. He staggered back toward the stairs, but the door wouldn't budge. He pounded, screamed, begged. The whispers filled his head, louder, sharper, all around him. And then he saw her, his wife, standing among them, her hair matted with dirt, her skin pale, lips cracked, but her eyes were gone. She tilted her head, smiled, and whispered just one word, stay. He dropped to his knees, trembling. The creatures circled him, their movements jerky, unnatural. Some drag broken legs. Others crawl with shattered arms. Yet all of them moved with one purpose, to keep him there. / midstory CTA 330. If this story has your heart racing, hit subscribe right now, because this basement isn't done yet. / main climax, 3:30 to 6 o'clock. One of the figures leaned closer. Its voice was rasping, ancient. You live on our land. You breathe our air. You are ours. The husband's chest tightened. He could feel the basement floor shaking, the pit widening, and then he realized they weren't just rising. They were pulling him down. Hands grabbed at his ankles, his wrists, cold, wet, stronger than any living thing. He tried to fight, but his strength was nothing compared to theirs. His wife stepped closer, her voice soft, almost loving. You can't fight the soil. It always wins. /cliffhanger ending 6:00+. The last thing he saw before the basement lights went out was the pit opening wider, a black void, an endless grave, and dozens of hands dragging him down into the earth. The next morning, the house stood silent. No signs of struggle, no broken furniture, no husband, no wife, only the smell, that same sharp scent of fresh soil, seeping up through the cracks in the floor. To be continued. Perfect. Let's carry the nightmare forward. Here's part 6 of The Basement Smells Like Fresh Soil. #, studio microphone, YouTube voiceover script, part 6. /hook recap, midnight to 0:20. By morning, the couple was gone. No trace, no sound, only the smell of fresh soil rising from the basement. /suspenseful setup, 0:20 to 1 o'clock. Neighbors grew suspicious. The windows stayed dark. Mail piled up on the porch. And that smell, it drifted into the street. So strong. People crossed the other side just to avoid it. Finally, police were called. But when they entered the house, everything looked normal. The kitchen was clean, clothes folded, phones left on the counter, like the couple had simply vanished, except for the basement. /build-up 1 to 3:30. When officers descended the stairs, the stench nearly knocked them off their feet. One of them gagged, covering his face, and then they saw it. The basement floor, freshly patched just weeks ago, was cracked wide open again, and at the center of the room, the pit, dark, silent, as if waiting. They called for backup, roped off the house, and sent for ground-penetrating radar. The scans came back worse than anyone imagined. The entire foundation of the home was hollow, layer after layer of disturbed soil, and buried within it, hundreds of shapes, human shapes, not just from recent decades, but stretching back centuries. /midstory CTA 3:30. If you're hooked right now, make sure to subscribe, because what they uncover next will leave you cold. /main climax 3:30 to 6 o'clock. Historians were brought in. They traced the land back before the house, before the neighborhood, and what they found was chilling. Long before the town was built, this soil was used as a burial ground, not just for the dead, but for those cast out, murderers, thieves, outcasts the community wanted to erase. They were buried here without prayer, without peace, layer after layer of restless souls, stacked on top of each other. And every family that built on this land was swallowed by it. /cliffhanger ending 6:00+. The house was condemned, boarded up, left to rot. But locals say the ground still shifts at night, that if you stand close enough, you can hear the soil breathing, whispers rising from beneath your feet. And sometimes, just before dawn, a thin crack opens in the pavement outside, releasing that same unmistakable smell, the smell of fresh soil, waiting for its next victim. To be continued. Got it. Let's unravel the curse even further. Here's part 7 of The Basement Smells Like Fresh Soil. #, studio microphone, YouTube voiceover script, part 7. /hook recap, midnight to 0:20. The house was condemned, boarded up, left to rot, but the ground beneath it was still alive. /suspenseful setup, 0:20 to 1 o'clock. Months passed, then years. The property became an eyesore, the kind of place kids dared each other to enter at night. Most came back laughing, but a few never came back at all. Police searched, but every time they ended at the same place, the basement. And every time the cracks were wider. /build-up 1 to 3:30. One investigator refused to give up, Detective Harris. He'd seen too many missing persons reports tied to the same address, and he wanted answers. One evening, against orders, he entered the house alone, basement flashlight in hand. The air was thick with dust, but beneath it all was that same unmistakable smell. Fresh soil. He shined a light across the floor and froze. The pit was gone, completely sealed, smooth, unbroken concrete. But in the center of the room were footprints, dozens of them, pressed into the cement, as if people had walked straight through the floor. /midstory CTA 330. If this is already giving you chills, make sure you're subscribed, because what Detective Harris finds next, you need to hear. /main climax 3:30 to 6 o'clock. Harris ran the prints for analysis. They matched multiple missing persons from the past 30 years, as if the basement itself had recorded every victim. But then, something stranger. A partial print that didn't match anyone in the system. Not a man, not a woman, not even human. The shape was wrong. Too long, too thin, like a hand twisted into a foot. Harris couldn't explain it, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something down there was moving, choosing, taking who it wanted. And then he disappeared too. /cliffhanger ending 6:00+. His cruiser was found parked outside the house. Keys still in the ignition. Radio still on. But Harris? Gone without a trace. When officers searched the basement again, they found one new detail. Fresh cracks. And written in the dirt beside them, smudged by a trembling hand, was a single word. *stay. *to be continued. Perfect. Let's carry this deeper into darkness. Here's part 8 of The Basement Smells Like Fresh Soil. #, studio microphone, YouTube voiceover script, part 8. /hook recap, midnight to 0:20. Detective Harris vanished. Only his cruiser remained. And in the basement dirt, the word stay was scrawled by a trembling hand. /suspenseful setup 0:20 to 1 o'clock. His disappearance shook the town. For the first time, locals spoke openly. Stories that had been whispered for generations. Warnings parents gave their children. And one secret that no one wanted to admit. The house wasn't just cursed. It was being fed. /build up 1 to 3:30. Old Town records revealed a chilling truth. Every few years, someone vanished. A drifter, a runaway, a stranger just passing through. And the disappearances always coincided with the smell. That sharp, earthy scent of fresh soil. Some families claimed the curse could be contained. That as long as someone went missing, the ground stayed quiet. The cracks sealed. The whispers fell silent, which meant the town knew. They knew all along, and they let the house choose its victims. /midstory CTA 330. If this story has you hooked, be sure to subscribe now, because the next revelation will make you question every small town you've ever known. /main climax 3:30 to 6 o'clock. An old journal was found in the town archives, written by the very first sheriff over a century ago. In it, he described the land as hungry, how the earth beneath the house never stayed still, how bodies buried there never rotted. They were taken. The journal ended with one final entry, a warning scrawled in shaky ink. Do not disturb the soil. Do not seal the pit. If it cannot feed, it will take all of us. And maybe the most terrifying part, the handwriting on that final entry matched Detective Harris's. /cliffhanger ending 6:00+. But Harris had only disappeared weeks ago. The journal? It was dated 1891. So how could his words already be written? To be continued. #, studio microphone, YouTube voiceover script, part 10. /hook recap, midnight to 0:20. The screams poured through the cracks. Hundreds of them. Men, women, children, all trapped beneath the soil. And now, the house could no longer hold them in. /suspenseful setup 0:20 to 1 o'clock. Neighbors reported the ground shaking. Windows rattled, doors slammed, dogs barked until their throats went raw. And then silence, as if the earth itself was holding its breath. The condemned house stood waiting. Build up 1 to 3:30. A final team of investigators entered. Archaeologists, priests, even scientists who believed the house sat on a geological fault. But once inside, they knew this was no fault line. The cracks on the basement walls had widened into gaping wounds. Inside them, human faces pressed against the soil, mouths opening, hands clawing from the dirt, desperate to escape. One priest whispered a prayer. Another dropped to his knees in horror, and the archaeologist, voice trembling, said what no one wanted to hear. This isn't a house. It's a mouth. /mid-story CTA 330. If you followed the story this far, don't forget to subscribe, because the ending is near, and you don't want to miss what comes out of the earth next. /main climax, 3:30 to 6 o'clock. The team tried everything. Salt, fire, even explosives. But no matter what they did, the cracks spread faster, as if the ground was laughing at their efforts. And then, the pit opened one last time. Not small, not hidden, but a cavern yawning wide, swallowing half the basement floor. From it, the screams rose louder than ever, not just voices, but cries begging for help, for release. The investigators stared down into the darkness and saw thousands of bodies, writhing, clawing, stacked in endless layers. The dead reaching up, pulling at the living, trying to drag them down. And in the center of them all stood Detective Harris. His face twisted, his skin pale. He lifted his hand slowly, pointed straight at the investigators, and whispered the word they all dreaded to hear. Stay. /cliffhanger ending 6:00+. The floor collapsed. The team was swallowed whole. And when the dust settled, the basement was quiet again. The pit sealed itself. The cracks smoothed over. The house stood silent. To anyone passing by, it looked empty, ordinary, just another abandoned property. But those who live nearby swear, if the wind is right and the night is still, you can hear the screams rising from below. And always, that smell, the smell of fresh soil. To be continued. Final chapter soon. ***. Got it. Let's bring this story to a powerful, haunting close, tying all the threads together but leaving just enough unease to stay in the viewer's mind long after the video ends. Here's the final chapter ending of The Basement Smells Like Fresh Soil. #, studio microphone, YouTube voiceover script, final chapter. /hook recap, midnight to 0:20. For years, the house devoured lives. Couples, detectives, strangers, all gone without a trace. And yet, the pit always sealed itself. The soil always smoothed over, until nothing remained but the smell. /suspenseful setup 0:20 to 1 o'clock. Researchers, priests, skeptics, all tried to explain it. Curse land, a geological phenomenon, a rift in time itself. But the truth was far simpler. The land was hungry, and hunger doesn't need explanation, only feeding. Build up 1 to 3 o'clock. The town learned to live with it. Some avoided the property. Others whispered bargains. Every few years, when someone vanished, people stopped asking questions, because deep down, they understood the pit wasn't going anywhere, and if it couldn't take one, it would take all. /main climax 3 to 5 o'clock. The house finally collapsed one stormy night. The roof caved, walls buckled, and the basement, once sealed, opened one final time. Witnesses swore the ground pulsed, as if the earth itself was breathing. They heard screams rising from the rubble, not just the voices of the missing, but thousands more, generations of the forgotten. The soil had become a prison, and for the first time, the pit spoke, not with whispers, not with chants, but a single word that shook the air. *, forever. *, then silence. Backslash resolution 5 to 6:30. By morning, the ruins were gone. Where the house once stood, there was nothing but an empty field. No foundation, no rubble, just flat earth, soft and freshly turned. The land was sold. A playground was built. Children laughed, ran, played. But sometimes they'd stop, turn toward the ground, and wrinkle their noses. "Do you smell that?" They'd ask. "That dirt smell? Like something just got buried." Parents would laugh. But the locals knew. The land never forgets. It only waits. Backslash final words 6:30 plus. And if you ever find yourself in a basement and you catch that sharp scent of fresh soil, be careful, because it might not just be dirt. It might be the land waiting for you